Last year, I did something that some people have told me was incredibly brave, and others have told me was monumentally stupid. And that was to initiate a legal challenge against the government for issuing HS2 with notice to proceed. And now, 8 months later, I'm about to have the permissions hearing, which is basically a hearing to see if I get to have a hearing. The legal case was taken on two main grounds. Firstly, that HS2 is pretty much a fraud and has been right from the start. I mean, there is stuff in the public domain which suggests that Parliament's been misled, the Civil Service Code's been breached, the Ministerial Code's been breached. Well, basically the Nolan principles on public life have just been ripped up and chucked down the toilet. Companies Act, that would be another one. Oh yeah, and Section 4 of the 2006 Fraud Act, fraud by abuse of position. All seem like they might have happened. And the thing is, there's so many different things about HS2 that sort of point towards a bit of deception, whether that's hiding the truth from the public or just making stuff up, that while we think we've got everything, we might have missed something. So if you can think of something that really, really should be in that case, then send us an email to evidence@stophs2.org by the 9th of March. Yes, not long at all. We can't promise we'll get back to you because it's a bit hectic at the moment. We might get back to you in quite a while after you send the email, but if you can send stuff on like that, if you just think of anything that we might have missed, please send it on. The other issue in terms of fraud, of course, is you may well be a landowner along the route, and HS2 has taken your land either on a permanent or temporary basis, and we're getting the impression that not everyone's getting quite as paid as they should do. And of course, if you've incurred a loss as a result of HS2 not paying you, then that could be construed again as fraud by abuse of position, just the fact that you've incurred a loss. And if that's the case, we'd like to hear from you, especially because it seems some people are telling us that, well, how do I put this? The sort of thing that might be happening is someone saying, well, someone's telling farmers that, oh, you want to make a fuss about this? Well, we could take more of your land, you know. So maybe just shut it, okay? And if that's happening, that would be what was it? Oh, fraud by abuse of position, wouldn't it? So if that sort of thing's happening, we'd very much like to know. Again, evidence@stophs2.org by Tuesday, the 9th of March. The second thing, I've forgotten the word now, it doesn't matter. The second ground that the case is being taken on is environmental. Now, of course, HS2 was set by an Act of Parliament. It's the biggest construction project the country's ever seen. There's going to be a lot of environmental damage, and no matter how much we might not like it, a law was passed that accepted a massive amount of environmental damage and a massive carbon impact. And much as you like it, you can't legally challenge that because that is an Act of Parliament. All of that stuff was assessed. But hang on, HS2 seemed to be doing stuff that wasn't assessed, that was outside of the environmental statement, which various courts so far have said everything's in the environmental statement. And HS2, well, these construction compounds seem to be cropping up that weren't in the environmental statement. They seem to be closing roads that wasn't covered in the environmental statement, and moving construction traffic again along roads that wasn't in the environmental statement, chopping stuff down that when you look at the environmental statement maps isn't meant to get chopped down. And that's not just in the area that HS2 are meant to work in. It seems to be happening outside of the Act limits, because HS2 have got all these powers to do all this stuff, but only within a certain area. They work outside that area. They can't work outside that area. That's outside the hybrid bill. That's outside the Acts of Parliament. But it seems that they may be doing that. If you were around back in the day in 2013, 2015, etc., when petitioning was happening, when the environmental statement was around, you may well have noticed that this is happening. We'd very much like to hear from you. If you weren't, you can access those maps for the environmental statement and the subsequent additional provisions, which change a few things, at our website, stophs2.org. There's also the environmental statement reports, which are very, very long and contain a lot of stuff that isn't really relevant to the case. What is are the traffic surveys, because they contain information that is verifiable, that physical impacts that can be observed today. If these things are or aren't happening, we want to hear from you. Again, to evidence at stophs2.org by the 9th of March. If you go to our website, as I say, you can find the links to the environmental statement, the maps, the reports and the additional provision maps, and of course how to donate to the campaign. And once again, if you have any evidence of HS2 breaching the environmental statement, working outside the Act limits, or stuff that, well, may be construed as not being totally honest about everything, please send that to evidence at stophs2.org. Thank you.